Villains in fiction tend to fit a certain template: erudite, aristocratic, queer-coded, monologuing, and vaguely British. There's nothing wrong with that, but it gets a little old after a while. And though I personally absolutely love campy villains in movies, it rarely works for me on the page. Without an over-the-top scenery-chewing actor to bring the corny dialogue to life, it just falls flat for me. So for this episode of Rite Good, we're going to take a look at some real-life villains and see how fiction measures up. With me today is Kelton of Psychic Dolphin Garage and Garbage In, Garbage Out. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, happy to be here. It's always a fun time. I'm feeling not at all out of my element having a serious discussion on villains instead of making dick jokes on the internet.
But I'm guessing your podcasts are a little bit political, so a lot of these guys we're going to talk about tonight are probably people whose stories you're familiar with.
Unfortunately so,
Yeah.
Yes. It's a surprising amount of crossover between that. Right. Studying the news and getting used to the horrifying realities that we live in.
Oh, yeah.
Always a joy.
Yeah. But before we get into real-life villains, let's talk a little bit about the standard campy villain template, because Disney villains especially are notorious for this, but genre fiction a lot. Honestly, a lot of YA fiction too, even if it's not like speculative, often has kind of similar villains. I mean, they have a very similar sense of style. There's lots of purples. There's usually a cape involved, gloves. They love to monologue and do these monologues in which they explain exactly their motivations and their master plan. They're usually brilliant, at least very selectively brilliant. And usually there's a traumatic event during their formative years that led directly to the specific thing they're mad about. So, for example, if the villain of a movie hates women, then it's probably because a woman did something bad to him or his mom was real mean or something.
Well, of course, it has to be the woman's fault in some way, shape, or form.
Right. But in general, it's just, here's this very specific thing that led very specifically to the thing that I'm mad at. Whereas human psychology is often a lot weirder, a lot less sensible. Like, this guy's really misogynistic. What happened to him? His father was abusive. Wait, what? Like, over and over again, that's the case. But his father was a man? Okay. All right. They tend to be very colorful, but they're often very self-aware, like, oh, I love being evil. And usually there's some kind of grand plan, like the serial killer in Seven, John Doe, had a very grand plan, a master plan of I'm going to cleanse the world of evil and get people thinking about the 7 deadly sins. There's always some, like, I'm going to take over the world, grand, extraordinary plan.
I mean, the same is true with Kevin Spacey in real life, I guess.
Yeah.
So.
You know, that's true. That is true. Although his Christmas mug, his Christmas oven mitts, I don't know if they quite hold up to the villainous purple cape. That apron.
Do you think it's a little bit more glitter to qualify?
Yeah, well, if you wear the apron on your back, then it's a cape.
That's very true. What are aprons but front capes?
They're front capes for baking instead of back capes for evil. So he got it backwards.
There's now some super villain origin story about an evil baker where that's like the defining moment. We're about to see that on some Marvel TV show right now, undoubtedly.
So let's look at how that holds up in real life. We're going to stick with English-speaking villains of the past 30 years or so. My foreign languages are not particularly great, so I don't feel comfortable critiquing the nuances of another person's speech patterns very well. And since most writers aren't doing a lot of historical fiction, I figure, well, let's kind of stick with the here and now-ish. And so we're going to look at a series of real-life villains and kind of score them in 4 categories: speech, style/mannerisms, origin story, and master plan.
It's a 4-quadrant cycle.
Exactly.
That I think we can run through all of these people in.
Right.
Now, are we supposed to be grading them, like who has the best origin story or who has the best speech patterns as we go through?
Well, why don't we look at it at the end and think, okay, which of these holds up closest to a sort of fictional camp villain.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, because there's some competition. We are going to start in the financial sector with a really horrifying villain who died under questionable circumstances. Jeffrey fucking Epstein.
That's right. When people talk about crimes in the financial sector, Epstein technically qualifies, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, he works in finance, although according to the people many of his victims, they never remember him actually working.
Crazy. He's just that good at his job, apparently.
He never appeared to go to an office of any kind. It was really extraordinary. It's very questionable, like, where did this money come from? There's a lot of unanswered questions here in this case. There's a lot going on here.
I'm just glad that we're going to devote the entirety of this episode and the next 48 episodes analyzing every single issue about Jeffrey Epstein.
Right.
That hasn't been done before, right?
Right. But let's start with speech patterns. It's really hard to find audio of his voice. He was a little reclusive about that, but his speech patterns are just sort of regular, bland New York City guy.
As you become known as a philanthropist, or in giving away money, then you become the perfect victim for frauds and identity theft.
So, accent not British at all. Disappointing.
I wonder if he has that almost overly New York Dustin Hoffman-esque style accent to him, because I could possibly see that, although that would make him seem, I guess, almost relatable in a weird way, instead of having that bizarre aloofness.
Yeah, Dustin Hoffman doesn't play too many supervillains, as far as I'm aware. All right. Yeah. Style and mannerisms. He dressed like a fucking slob, so he was not fabulous at all. Very sloppy.
Not a fit king. Oh, no.
Yeah. I'm going by a Vanity Fair profile of him that was published in 2019. He didn't drink or take drugs or smoke. He didn't like to be around people who did. He practiced yoga. He showered many times a day, so he was a bit of a germaphobe.
Gotta get that guilt off somehow.
Right. He abhorred restaurants and ate whole grains, proteins, and leafy greens. He believed in transhumanism and had a theory that if you had too much muscle mass, you wouldn't be as smart as you could be. Which, that just always strikes me as like the theory proposed by a little weenie guy who doesn't lift.
Exactly. I was about to say, like, any guy who benches sub 300 has the same theory all the way through at the gym. So.
Well, I'm too smart. I'm sorry.
I think the best example of that, just simply not being true in the real world, is the actor who played Ivan Drago.
Yeah, Dolph Lundgren.
That's right. I mean, the man just looks like he's chiseled from a block of granite and look like he could be an old-timey Norse god of yore. And right. He's a legitimate genius and has actually accomplished it. So instead of having this bizarre genius cult around him, he just actually decided he wanted to do acting instead, which, man, what a life.
I know. Doesn't he have like an advanced degree in, it was something really it was like astrophysics or something crazy like that, like something really smart.
And chemical engineering,
wow.
I know, was one of them. He is one of those things of where he could be cast in the role of like a Harvard or MIT style professor, and unfortunately no one would believe him in that role,
right.
Even though he might actually be the most knowledgeable for that particular role.
Right.
It's a just man, what a way to get pigeonholed early on in your career.
I know. Still, he's making crazy money to work out and have a great time. So you know what?
Yes, yeah. I'm not going to pour one out for him quite yet.
He's doing okay. I think honestly, if most of us had the choice, would you like to be pigeonholed as a giant, muscular, gorgeous beast hunk? I think most of us would say, "All right, I wouldn't mind that." Okay. But returning back to someone way less muscular and smart, Epstein, according to Truanon's really, really good interview with one of his former victims, Maria Farmer, she said she thought he was creepy and too smiley. And something she mentioned that I thought was really interesting is that he had a lot of people he was influencing. He had a lot of people in his social circle, including the Clintons and Donald Trump, and just startling amounts of influential politicians, business leaders, and academics. But he never had any friends. Like, he would have those friendship conversations that you and I would have with our close friends. Instead, he would have them with his staff.
That's I can picture like the cinematic level of it now when Adam Sandler inevitably gets cast to play Jeffrey Epstein in some dramatic role fashion of where he's just talking about he isn't able to forge these real connections, and so he's trying to go back to a simpler time. Blah 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 blah.
Right. Oh, and apparently he had absolutely shit style, startlingly tacky decor. His Florida mansion, and this was in the 1990s, had thick shag carpeting. So that's inexcusable.
I mean,
that is disgusting.
If you're going to be committing crimes, especially the types of crimes he was committing, shag carpet probably isn't the ideal surface floor plan that you want to have.
It's basically a giant DNA swab. You don't want to keep one of those in your home.
Yeah. I always expect him to just be like 1970s linoleum, kind of just, something very clinical about that. But it's even more bizarre to realize that he was kind of a loser, weakling with no real taste. Damn.
Rich people I've found over and over again have really shitty taste most of the time. Like, I used to work in a resort where we had a lot of wealthy clientele, and they legitimately didn't know what good cuisine was. We would the food we would serve them, a lot of it was just kind of Cisco brand. This is from a giant can of something, and they thought it was fucking great. It's cafeteria food, glorified cafeteria food.
It's like, I hate to bring him up, but it's a lot like with Trump and steaks.
Oh, totally.
Where he likes them to be super duper well done and eats them with ketchup.
Right.
Just the worst dad at a barbecue is what he is.
Yeah, zero taste at anything. So rich people are not very good tastemakers because they don't know what good taste is. They sort of pay other people to figure out how to make things look nice, but they only kind of pay people who already agree with them.
Yeah.
So that's a problem.
It moves at a snail's pace, I suppose.
Yeah. Anyways, I tried to find out a little bit more about his past. See, was there some sort of formative incident, some sort of serious childhood trauma that made him like this? I couldn't find anything. It looks like he had kind of a normal middle-class upbringing. His dad worked for the Department of Parks and Rec. He was just really good at making connections and treating everything like an object of profit, and he got rewarded for that, and that's how he treated people, and that's sort of what he turned into.
Joy. I'm just trying to imagine what that take your kid to work day would be. Because to someone, that bright-eyed, bushy-tailed kid, oh, what's your name? Oh, my name's Jeffrey Epstein. And there was a time when people were like, oh, okay, Jeff. Well, Jeffy, it certainly was great to have you around right now. Boy, never be a stranger. It's weird to think about that.
You're kind of hoping he must have been grown in a vat or
exactly
some failed experiment. No, it sounded like he was just kind of a normal kid who had a whole lot of fucking red flags. He taught at private schools a lot and kept getting dismissed for some reason, except that the administrators kept giving him good recommendations afterwards. So good job there.
It's like that deacon strategy in the Catholic Church about why does this guy keep bouncing around everywhere? Oh, he just loves teaching kids. That's what
really
he is. He's a real fixer. Yeah.
So what was his master plan? In movie villains, and this guy was a very grandiose guy. He had a private slave island. That's pretty Bond villainish. But yeah. Bond villains at least have some sort of master plan. What was this fucker's master plan? I cannot tell.
If I had a guess, do you remember that New York Times article probably I want to say it's a year and a half now, but it's probably just, less than a year because time is fake.
Yeah.
But about how Jeffrey Epstein was hoping to like seed the human race with his DNA,
Right.
on like a giant farm, like that seemed to be like his ultimate plan. If I had to give him one, other than just be like the CIA default guy to get blackmail on the rich and powerful. One or the other, I guess. Short-term versus long-term plans, as you would say in the dating world, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, that sense of immortality, it seems to be really common among these rich guys, too. I mean, Elon Musk said he always wanted a ton of children, but had zero plan to ever interact with any of them. Peter Thiel has spoken quite a bit about how human mortality is simply a bad mindset, and I will transcend it by drinking the blood of virile young men. So...
Yeah, there's a lot wrapped up in good old T-Dog with his mentality.
Yeah,
good Lord.
But yeah, immortality is a really common thread among these very rich people. I guess if you devote your entire life to money and thinking about, I'm going to die and that's it, then my money goes away. Like...
Yeah, all it takes is, one Ponzi scheme or one issuance of just not being the biggest fish in the pond. And then that doesn't mean anything. So then it just goes back to genetics, I suppose, and figuring out, well, I mean, I'm not the type to settle down. So time to make a baby ranch out in Wyoming or something.
Yes. All right. So let's do an Epstein-related one. I'm probably mispronouncing her name. You know what? I'm probably going to pronounce her name like 8 different ways over the course of this. His enabler / girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell. And I have no idea if I'm pronouncing her name right. I feel she absolutely shares top billing with him. Because
see, I've always pronounced it Ghislaine Maxwell.
Ghislaine, I like that.
I also know that that's probably wrong, too.
It's probably wrong, but I think it's okay to mispronounce the name of someone like that. And it seems pretty appropriate.
Yeah, it's one of those bizarre instances of being like, oh yeah, have you heard of that guy, Adolf Hitler?
Yeah. Excuse me? You're being very rude. That's not how you pronounce his name. Show some respect.
Yeah, that's the issuance there, right there.
I noticed that my speech today was leveraging technology to create a global ocean community. I'm going to change that on you, and I'm going to leverage technology to create a new country. I'm the founder of an internet project called the Terramar Project. It's an ocean-based digital platform which I'm going to be talking to you about.
It's tricky to find recordings of speech by her, but she had a pretty disgusting sense of humor. A friend of hers says she used to joke about keeping herself rail thin because Epstein liked thin girls, and she would say, I do it the way Nazis did with the Jews. The Auschwitz diet, I just don't eat. Ha ha!
My God.
Extremely cool.
There's a lot to be wrapped up in that sentence there. Man, okay. I mean, at what point do you think, like on what day of not eating or of doing methamphetamines to make sure that then you are able to quell the hunger pangs, do you think, and you look in the mirror and you think maybe he's not going to see me like he sees those other girls because I'm over the age of 17.
Right.
You know? It's just bizarre.
All right, so let's look at the style / mannerisms. Sort of typical NYC career woman style, appalling haircut, that weird, like, short hair, almost a mullet thing. Not a great idea. Really unexcusable haircut, and it could have been okay in the early 90s, but she held on to it way beyond.
Do you think that it's the same logic as, like, the old guys with their newsy hats? Like, well, it was popular 60 years ago, and it's coming back around to being popular now, and now it's no longer popular. It came back once, it can come back again.
Yes. Those are at least charming, though. Like the newsy caps, like an old guy in a newsy cap. Like, that's all right.
Not to reveal too much of how much a loser I was in high school, but I never wanted to be one of those fedora bros until I went to the Greek festival over in Houston, and then I found a Greek sailing hat that is basically just a fedora but with better trim around it.
Yes.
And I was like, this is the hat for me. And unironically wore that for a good half of a year.
Nice.
Man, highlight fashion choice over here in Houston, Texas.
All right. Maria Farmer, one of Epstein's victims, referred to Ghislaine's style as glitzy and tacky, quote unquote. Still very charming, obsessed with Ralph Lauren, very theatrical, and she had the villainous British accent. So there's that.
I mean, now, if we were to be making the inevitable Epstein film, again, starring Adam Sandler here, would Ralph Lauren, you think, be okay with that level of sponsored advertising? Because I could see them not feeling comfortable, but also simultaneously being pretty all right with it as a decision.
Yeah, I could see them being completely okay with it. It's like, it's so transgressive and edgy. I mean, anorexia and sexual exploitation of minors, that I think suits with the fashion industry pretty fucking well.
Oof. Oh, God. Oh, boy. Hitting the nail on the head there. Yeah. This is HGTV all of a sudden.
Yeah. We would never accept starving girls. What? No. Not in my industry. Not in my fashion industry.
I would love that. The CEO of Ralph Lauren. Wait, hold on. They're doing what? Yeah. How long? For how long have they not been eating? Oh, my God. Well, how many people know about this? Yeah. Everyone knows about this.
I mean, this was the industry that had, at least back in the 90s, remember that whole trend, heroin chic?
Oh, that's right.
Where it, like, deliberately sought out emaciated heroin addicts to be fashion models. It's a really good industry that's very good for women. It's fucking great. It's so good.
This is happening at the same time that, like, everyone's shitty high school garage band was getting signed. Okay, yeah. I think the genders are being treated equally here. This is nice.
Why do you think so many 90s girls got into witchcraft? It was just like the real world. No, I need to stick pins in a doll. I need to light some candles and chant. I'm out of here.
I'm just picturing Miss Maxwell watching Charmed, going like, "This is me. I relate to these characters."
Oh God. So moving on to her origin story, she has a way more interesting origin story than Jeffrey. She's the daughter of a disgraced publishing tycoon, Robert Maxwell, who was himself a Holocaust survivor, though she and the other kids were raised Anglican. He was disgraced because of financial discrepancies in his business dealings, not for fucking kids, officially.
Damn.
However, here's where it gets a little creepy. Ghislaine was Robert's favorite child, and he forbade her from openly dating boys or bringing them home.
Alrighty.
All right.
Perfectly normal thing for a dad to set up with his daughter.
Yeah. So that's something. There's a lot going on there. So in terms of master plan, of course, a source close to Maxwell says that she spoke very glibly and confidently about getting girls to service Epstein, saying that was what she wanted. And she always thought that if she just did one more thing for Jeffrey to make him happy, that he would marry her. Her goal was to just get this fucking disgusting piece of shit to marry her.
And that really, just to expand out just slightly, that seems to be like the trademark of a cult, right? That when you have one kind of schlubby dude who suddenly is getting like this rock star woman to do all of the dirty work
She's
for
like
him.
Sela, or whatever her name was, in that Wild Wild Country.
Yeah, that's right. Or from Smallville, right? That the actress from Smallville with the Nixium sex cult.
Oh, right.
Taking over.
Yeah.
Man, just I'm just saying that it's a good thing I don't know any attractive people immediately near me. Otherwise, cult-like. Let's get this shit started.
Yeah.
Got nothing better to do in quarantine.
Or the Manson girls. Now that I think of it. A lot of these were like attractive women, and he was just this beardy, gross, failed folk musician. They're like, yeah, I'll kill for him.
Now, how many attractive women, though, have gone after vaguely bearded, quasi-hipster vibe kind of dudes?
I mean, every DSA couple. Let's be real.
Oh, no. Oh, God.
Oh, God. It's a little bit saddening, though. I feel weird saying this. It's so pathetic to see someone like doing all this evil stuff for a man. It's like, start your own evil cult.
Yeah.
Ghislaine, come on.
Believe in yourself.
Believe in your fucking more female
Traffic young boys,
leaders.
okay?
Like, practice some self-care. Do evil on your own behalf.
It's the classic case of just not really giving a woman her proper agency. Don't let herself be defined by the man that she is with. Strike out on her own. Have confidence. Darkest version reboot of how Stella
Ghislaine's
got her
entire
group back.
life fails the Bechdel test. Really extraordinary.
My God.
Okay, do we want to talk about the Koch family? I didn't really put down much about those guys. I don't know much about them, unfortunately. It's like such a big
I
thing.
mean, yeah, there's not really a whole lot to talk about with the Kochs, other than the fact that they're just like blatantly evil.
They're evil.
And they're sharks, in the degree that there were 3 of them, and then they kicked one of the other brothers out because he was only like regular evil, as opposed to super duper evil like the other 2.
Yeah.
And then one of them died. And
Yay.
then good old Wyatt, who's the son of the kicked out brother, he's just riding high, doing like dummy fat guy Hawaiian shirt shtick.
My father said to me, Wyatt, you can do whatever you want to in life, but just make sure you do it well and you do it with passion. Every day I go to the office, I enjoy creating the clothes. I want my shirts to be able to be worn in the boardroom or in a discoteca or a nightclub or on a yacht.
Like, he is just a Tommy Bahamas come to life is kind of his whole general vibe.
Yeah.
Only he's really trying to pitch this Hawaiian shirt line like it's something that's truly groundbreaking. And it almost seems like a Tim and Eric sketch, really, that's come to life. Because he's talking about this like it's going to be something that is going to really set forward like a social statement to people.
Yeah. Whether you're at the boardroom or the discoteca.
Precisely. And the general stance, I think, for any sort of fashion is if you can picture Margaritaville being played in the background while your fashion is occurring, probably not as cutting edge as you originally think.
And something interesting that a friend of mine pointed out, he was a fashion writer, is that the shirts, even size small, are really shapeless around the midsection. So like They're
Perfect.
cut for a fat guy, even when they're sized for a thin person.
Yeah.
They're just he made an entire company purely for shirts for himself to wear, which I almost respect in a way.
Yeah, these are shirts for me. This is my clothing
This is
line.
my clothing line. You guys can wear it if you feel like it, but like I'm just really comfy. I'm feeling myself. I'm feeling confident.
Yeah, woke
Like it's
body
called
positive
self-esteem,
king.
and he's got it.
He's the antithetical fashion statement to the heroin era, as we were talking
Right.
about earlier. So, which way, Western man?
I would not mind seeing more villains a la Wyatt Koch with his fashion sense, though, instead of the purple cape. Just the most gloriously fucking tacky shirt of all time. Just a doofy ginger guy. trying to pose with models who are all sort of leaning away from him in every shot of his little advertisement.
Yeah, he seems to almost have accepted the fact, though, that they would be there for money for him, and I can really get behind that level of self-awareness. You know,
Yeah.
that's the real box. I think he checks off more than any of the others. Is he knows what's up.
Yeah. Yeah, he's ridiculous, but he's less of a monster, so I'll give him credit for that. Although the money to fund that goofy shirt company did come from building oil derricks for the Nazis. So that's not the best.
Yeah, let he who has not inherited wealth from Nazis cast the first stone in this elite social club.
And that is such a thing. Whenever you look at like any prominent family, you start seeing just Nazi business ties all over the fucking place. It's wild.
Yeah.
The Bush family, they were, I believe they like traded with the Nazis until it was officially banned. And I wrote a short story where the character who is this like awful tech lord industrialist, like his family built their fortunes designing ovens for Buchenwald, and like some readers complained like, oh, that's so over the top, that's so on the nose. I'm like, it's really fucking not, dude.
Yeah. Everything, and again, I don't want to make any generalizing statements about any writer's particular audience or what gets pushed out, but a lot of people who make that criticism, I feel like you need to ask some follow-up questions about like, well, what is your general knowledge about the ruling elites in America?
Yeah.
Like what have you actually done your own research on? Because I guess if you are kind of a flyover state, head in the sand type, that reading a story like that would be, oh my God, oh whoa, oh this is so out there. Previously, the most edgy thing I had ever read was Twilight by that Stephanie Meyer lady, and so I guess to those people it would certainly rock their world. But yeah. My point is, keep that up. Go for the shock value. Double down on it. Make it even more ridiculous and out there.
Yeah. And what is the Koch family's master plan? I mean, Wyatt is to wear comfy shirts and feel like a big good boy, and I respect that.
He's achieved his master plan. He has like a tropical island somewhere.
Yeah. And, he's wearing his shirts on a yacht with a bunch of pretty ladies that he paid to be there. So good for him, I guess.
Like, he is definitely the one guy who I would love to join his fantasy football team. Like, that just sounds like the most amazing time. Like, problematic fave is my point so far on this list, compared to, of course, Jeffrey Epstein. So.
I feel like he would be really easy to bully.
Oh,
and that would that would be a good time, like being invited to someone's yacht and just like giving him noogies the entire ride.
Think of the peer pressure you could get away with.
Oh God, you could make him eat a bug.
No, they do that all the time in other countries. It's a delicacy over there, man.
It's an aphrodisiac in some cultures.
Yeah. See that woman you paid to be here? I bet she would love it.
I promise. I swear to God, bro.
There we go. That's where it's going to actually come all boiled down to right there for poor little man. For their master plans, though, I mean, I really just think it's this bizarre hyper-capitalist. Like, their master plan is to just keep on growing like a cancer and accumulating more and more, like a dragon hoarding gold.
Right.
Like, it's just kind of what there is no end point. It's a constant, infinite horizon they're looking to.
Right. Just, we want to make more money and eliminate anything that prevents us from making more money. Whether that's like democracy or environmental law or just the environment.
But I mean, like,
eliminate
that's a miserable life, though. I mean, I understand it's not one and the same, but it's like with social media influencers, where like, well, how many million followers or views or whatever do you need before you consider that a successful video or before you feel happy? And it is never ceasing. It's trying to fill a void inside, and it's evident of that. So,
and they know a lot of people want to kill them, so that it's not like they can like have a normal human conversation. Like everywhere you go, you have to be surrounded by a massive security crew. If you're staying at a hotel, you've got to like rent out that entire floor because your neighbor might try to like drill a hole in the wall and stab you in your sleep or something. Like it's pretty fucking severe. So like that's the life you've got to live, and you've got to be willing to live that life of extreme isolation, and everyone wants you dead in exchange for, I don't know, yet another house.
meanwhile, you look out in the distance and there's Wyatt Coke on yet another jet ski living his best life.
Slowly lifting his sunglasses and making eye contact with the camera while Eye of the Tiger plays.
There's no way he's actually this cool, unfortunately.
Okay, so let's head from finance over to Silicon Valley, which is a land of some pretty extraordinary villains. This next entry might be controversial because I'm sure that we have a lot of weird nerds listening to us, but Wish.com, Tony Stark, Elon Musk.
The strongest argument for us being in a simulation, probably being in a simulation, I think is the following. That 40 years ago, we had Pong, like 2 rectangles and a dot. That
Right.
was what games were. Now, 40 years later, we have photorealistic 3D simulations with millions of people playing simultaneously, and it's getting better every year.
That is a great way of describing him. Because, I mean, I can't think of a guy who was more under the radar like in 2014. Maybe
Right.
it was like 2011. But like 2014, like under the radar, right? Then he blew up and everyone was just kind of thinking like, whoa, this guy, this is the man of the moment. This is the man of the hour. And then we all kind of got wise to his shtick.
Right.
Except for probably a couple thousand dudes on Reddit.
Yeah.
And, I mean, like they're all very loyal to Bitcoin. So, I mean, they're able
Yeah.
to still make those market forces work. But he just, it's spoiled milk. Just like in the same way that I think like we've all kind of gotten over Andrew Cuomo. Like how, you know, the general Democratic lib consensus was, whoa, this guy, man, like he's taking charge. And then we all just kind of got bored of him during quarantine. It's the same general idea of Elon Musk is, we just kind of, mostly we're wondering what he was up to. It wasn't that he was actually that cool to begin with.
Right. And I mean, okay, cool, electric cars, that sounds neat. The steering wheels keep falling off, that's a problem. There's an autopilot and you have to pay extra for it to actually like work without killing you.
Nice, of course.
It's pretty cool. And he's like, well, it doesn't actually drive itself. Well, you call it an autopilot. I don't. It's cruise control, dude. It's just call it cruise control. Come on.
Oh, quick! He's gonna make another flamethrower. Whoa, so
Yay.
cool.
He is epic bacon. And that brings us to his speech patterns. He very much speaks in the way of sort of Reddit humor. This is the epic bacon. Although in person, he speaks a little more creepily. According to an interview with his ex-wife says that he said to her very bluntly, "I am the alpha in this relationship," which is not fucked up at all. Another thing he told her is he was very controlling, and she said, "Hey, I'm your wife, not your employee." And his response was, "If you were my employee, I would fire you."
Which he ended up doing, because that's a quote from his ex-wife. So it's not like you get to have the moral superiority on that statement, bro. Like, I think everything's going incredibly well in your life when you're talking to the woman you've decided to try and spend the rest of your life with by saying, "I am the alpha."
He had a bunch of kids with that
straight
woman,
face.
too. Like, ugh.
R.I.P. Samurai, right? Is
Samurai.
that's how they pronounce the name?
Samurai,
Or something ridiculous.
Fibonacci sequence, hashtag, Bitcoin, Velociraptor, all of the Musk children.
I saw it was a fake tweet screenshot, but I loved it so much of Grimes, who said like, "Oh, we're both such big fans of fantasy. We were gonna name our child after Lovecraft's cat, but we decided against it."
Shit. Oh my god. Oh no. I mean, I don't think Grimes would, but Musk, he very well might. We'll get to that in a minute,
it's different.
though.
In South Africa, it's pronounced differently. It's fine.
So before we get to that, let's talk a little bit about his sense of style, mainly that he's a huge fucking dork. Mm-hmm. I forget, I think it was a tweet. God, half of this is just us quoting funny tweets, but...
I mean, go for it.
Yeah.
That's all podcasting is, at least my podcast, so...
But someone pointed out that it's kind of amazing that Elon Musk and Grimes are a billionaire and a pop star, but there is zero glamour around them.
Yes.
You see them together and they just look like kind of greasy and weird, like they're possibly at a Ren fair and they've been there for a long time and that they're kind of sweaty. Like they look like they don't smell real good.
They're not actually using their money, and and this leads to my conspiracy theory that they aren't actually like really as well off or as millionaires as I think people think, because the dude is always having to get external capital funneled in to make Tesla do well on the stock market. And it screams like a Ponzi scheme. Then, Grimes, being a somewhat successful musician with a cult following, can be good, but it's 2020. Like, how much do you think she actually makes off of Spotify? It's there are Patreons that are much more successful than what she's able to get off of residuals from that.
Money isn't real anyway, so who knows?
That's true.
It's not real. It doesn't exist. It's fake. If people think they're rich, then they're crazy rich, I guess. That's how it works. I don't know.
It's true. I'm going to wear one of Wyatt Coke's shirts, and I'm going to believe in myself.
The one with the money bags on it.
Yeah.
Using the secret to attract wealth into your life.
Oh no! I'm just gonna leverage Wyatt Coke shirts. Fuck the secret. Nope. It's gonna be only this from this point on.
Right. Oh god. So let's go to his interesting origin story, and this I think is an origin story that fits pretty well with James Bond villains. His family owned an emerald mine in South Africa during apartheid and abruptly left around the end of apartheid. So
Weird.
That's fine. Musk had some real issues with his father, and this is an instance in which I genuinely feel bad for the guy. When interviewers ask him about his father, he instantly gets close to tears. It's bad. Yeah, his dad...
It's good. What are you talking about? He's that moved.
His dad married his own stepdaughter? Yeah, so there's a lot of fucking bad shit going on in that. So, he has not spoken openly about more details of his family, which honestly, I wouldn't either. But... yeah, there's apparently I'm sure there are some really good reasons why thinking about his father makes him extremely upset. So there's that. I will take a moment to note, though, that something that strikes me reading the history of rich people with inherited wealth, just about every rich aristocratic family backstory legitimately looks like a supervillain origin story. Fiction does get it right in that case. Hack Hollywood screenwriters absolutely do write villainous backstories that are pretty well in tune with the life of any given aristocratic person.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the history of anybody who's inherited millions of dollars, and it's basically sounds like that one Dr. Evil monologue about being thrown in a sack and beaten with reeds. My father often boasted he invented the question mark.
Man, I keep on thinking though, with Musk and with the storylines that you could make from it, if you just were to tell people who he was and go through their origin, then ask is this person, if I were to tell you that they were trying to become a tech mogul and build a rocket ship. Could we trust this person? I think most people would say no.
No.
And instead, he's overcome all of that.
Yeah,
So-
we have no memory. We have zero memory. The past does not relate to the present in any way. What are you talking about? That's not happening now. That happened in some other time, and that time is not now, so it doesn't exist.
That's the incredibly like super cool esoteric view of it. All time is existing at the same point, so how can we actually judge anyone from the past if the past is happening right now somewhere else, man?
Like, all of the cells that were in his body then have regenerated and replaced themselves
that's
now.
true.
So I don't see
That's
what that
true.
has to do with anything.
If he was Peter Thiel, he would be like, that was 4 teenage boys ago. Oh, you can't judge me from that. That was when I was allergic to mushrooms for some reason.
Oh, God. Oh, God. So what is Elon Musk's master plan? I'm trying to figure out what the fuck he's going for. I feel like his master plan is to take all the cool shit he drew when he was a kid and make it real.
I think that his master plan is to get the most Reddit points of anyone on Earth, and
After
all of the
society
cool stuff he
collapses,
does.
Currency means nothing. The only real currency is Reddit gold. And he has amassed the most.
It's like what they say: if he has over 2 million Reddit karma, he belongs to the streets, honey. It's
Just...
can't tie him down. He's so lame.
I know.
It's so lame. I honestly could not tell you, because any idea of what his master plan would be is on the table. So I can't even make a joke about it. Because if I was to say, oh, he's going to have this Ponzi scheme level structure of a drilling company that he's going to then turn into having it be horizontal instead of vertical drilling, and call that revolutionary, and then going to try and redo public transit as we know it by then just making it Uber again, but on a closed loop circuit.
Right.
That would sound insane, but he's actively working towards that right now. So I have no idea. Probably his master plan is to bring apartheid back in one way, shape, or form. I don't know how he's going to do it, but he's going to do it.
Yeah. I'm just trying to figure out if he's going to divide it along traditional lines, or if he's going to divide it based on who can quote the most Monty Python lines without like needing to prepare.
He's going to try and get like real racist with it, but it won't work. He'll be like, if you enjoy freestyle rapping, go on this side of the line. If you enjoy improv, go on this side of the line. And then he's gonna be like, wait, no, hold on. What are you doing? My stereotypes. Something's horribly wrong. The simulation is off.
Who owns the most bacon-flavored foods that aren't like bacon-related? Like, who is the most epic Redditor, really?
Yeah, it's all gonna boil down to that.
Yeah.
Just gonna be him and I don't know, some like really cool Indonesian like 14-year-old just getting into flame wars as the apocalypse takes place. And I mean, it sounds sad, but like that 14-year-old is just owning him repeatedly.
Oh, absolutely. He tries to call the kid a pedo, but the child is underage himself, so it like just doesn't work. It's completely deflected.
Yeah.
His
like,
one
what,
weapon
you like
is useless
16-year-old
here.
girls? You pedophile. I'm like, I'm 14, bro. What's up? Come at me. I like older women. Can you say the same?
He tries to hire a private investigator to dig up dirt on the child, but this investigator also just takes the money and goes on vacation, like the previous one.
Yeah, can we just call that like pulling a Tiger King?
That was pretty
'Cause-
cool.
Yeah.
Respect to that guy, just taking the money and just spending it on booze. That's pretty
How
good.
can I get into that racket, by the way, of like, just being a PI or getting a reputation as a PI, but then when you get a ridiculous request, you just take the money and then fuck off.
Yep.
Because that's actual praxis right there.
Mm-hmm. All right. So another Silicon Valley villain. Let's talk about Elizabeth Holmes. Bringing this list to feminism, showing that women can also be diabolical and evil and weird. Theranos CEO and youngest self-made female billionaire, and by self-made I mean her parents were obscenely wealthy. I think her speech patterns are extremely famous and rather notorious. She does that weird fake deep voice like she's a kid pretending to be her dad calling in sick for her.
This is what happens when you work to change things, and first they think you're crazy, then they fight you, and then all of a sudden you change the world.
I don't know what you're talking about. Talking like this the whole time, just that
Elizabeth
sounds completely
can't come
normal.
to school today. This is Elizabeth's father. She's very sick. It's so good.
I mean, it's almost borderline offensive. Because, like, if it was a guy and he was doing an extreme falsetto voice while trying to talk to you about, like, cosmetics industry type stuff, right, or something else along those lines, people would laugh it out because that just sounds ridiculous. But, woman talking deeply because she figured out that people actually will take her seriously that way.
Right.
My God. Cracking the code.
Right. And her style was interesting, too. It was basically Steve Jobs cosplay, black turtlenecks, kind of messy hair. I think she did strike a very careful balance to be the right amount of pretty. Like, she's thin and blonde, but she's not glamorous or feminine enough for men to totally objectify her. And I would like to point out the fact that the people she hoodwinked tended to be older men. While women, like her former professor at Stanford, did not fall for her stupid bullshit. It was generally just like older, horny men who had like weird paternalistic horny feelings to this bright young lady. So she was able to harness just enough horniness to like draw them in, but not enough horniness to like get to the point where, things would get really unfortunate for her. And that is not an easy balance.
No, and I can't say that I have any experience in that particular realm. Yeah. So, man.
Yeah, so that does take some effort. So style was interesting. Her origin story, even though she touted herself as one of the youngest self-made female billionaires, she was the daughter of one of Enron's vice presidents. And for our Zoomer listeners, do we want to explain what Enron was? Enron was an energy company in California that was really shitty and evil.
It's not Exxon. Is my number one advice for all the Zoomers out there. You're gonna search, Enron. You're gonna think, no, it has to be Exxon. No, it's a company actually named Enron. Yeah, it's important for you.
And it was real shitty too. It was real bad. She studied chemical engineering at Stanford, but dropped out because, who the fuck needs reality to cramp your dreams? She wanted to build a black cube that could defy the laws of physics and thermodynamics, and she didn't need some fucking scientist to tell her, I'm sorry, that's not physically possible to do this to diagnose all the diseases simultaneously using one single drop of blood.
Well, to be fair, the scientist telling her that was Dolph Lundgren, so she didn't really take him that seriously. Yeah.
I mean, I almost respect her because the people she hoodwinked, all of the investors were these really evil motherfuckers, like fucking Henry Kissinger and shit. She was taking money from these guys to build bullshit, which I totally respect, except that she was feeding people fake medical information, which is really fucking bad. And she drove one of her scientists to suicide, which is horrible too.
Yeah, that's the part of the grift that you have a real hard time with, because you're like, yeah, take money from those rich fucks. They were going to probably spend it on either your bizarre, obvious scam thing or more Department of Defense contract level funding. So why not spend it on this? But then when you have it be people trying to check and make sure that they actually do have diabetes or whatever, because they were going to set up these testing things in CVS's, right? And I mean, it was just going to kind of be Oh, yeah. It was just going to be right there next to your blood pressure machine, essentially, was how it was pitched. And then instead, turns out a drop of blood obviously isn't enough. And it's just getting some random number generation of what disease you have according to this thing. Because then it would say, like, oh, we could be wrong. Go check it out with an actual doctor. Yeah. So, who knows?
Cancer survivors were hearing that it was coming back and freaking out because of these tests and getting biopsies that they really didn't need and finding out, no, false alarm, you're fine, it's still in remission. But, like, goddamn, that's a horrible thing to put a person through.
How many people do you think got told, like, and then when I went and the magic black box told me I had cancer, me and my husband, we just prayed and we prayed and we prayed. Then we went to the doctor. The doctor said there was no more cancer. It works, ladies and gentlemen.
We took some essential oils. We gave up gluten.
God. The only thing to put a mind at ease after a snake oil salesman is another snake oil salesman. So
we drank some of the Juicero juice, and it just cleaned us right out.
Raw water for a week and a half as well. I could talk about like stupid little scams like that. Like,
oh God,
all
magical.
Day.
I love
Juicero, just hands down.
The $700 Capri Sun machine. It's so good.
It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful because the only people that you're actually grifting are the sharper image level motherfuckers. So,
absolutely.
If there weren't ties to the IDF, I would say it's a perfect crime. So,
yeah, I mean the raw water guy. I mean, I still believe that deep down, secretly, he's some sort of anti-capitalist crusader, just convincing rich people to poison themselves. And I fucking respect that.
He is the Dark Knight
Hero.
operating.
So I'm not sure what her master plan was. Like, did she really believe that this shit was going to work? I
think she was hoping that the technology would actually catch up at that point. That, like, in a weird way, like with how Star Trek inspired cell phone design at the beginning because of the way their communicators were designed.
Right.
With the flip phone, that then she thought that by saying that they could do it with a drop of blood, that eventually people would say that they could do it with like a vial or something. And then she would just then essentially glom onto that and say, oh, okay, well, a drop will get you in the ballpark, but this small vial of blood, that will be the thing to confirm everything or whatever. I really thought that she was just kind of trying to run out the clock, if I had to guess.
Yeah. Or just, I don't know, maybe she genuinely believed she could, or maybe it was just, I really didn't think this far ahead. Like, people are going to give me a lot of money and tell me I'm cool. Then
yeah,
what? I don't need to think about that. I don't.
The definition of why you should think ahead and not cross that bridge when you get to it.
That's a problem for future me. And
yeah,
future me isn't really me, because my cells will regenerate over the course of 7 years.
Once again, that worst guy at the house party. No, but it is you, because time is a flat circle, man. I'm going to crush this PBR and explain to you, with drawing with a cigarette ash right now, how it all connects. Sorry, drawing on some very personal experiences here.
I think we've all met that guy at the college party.
Unfortunately.
We've all met that fucking guy. He was probably a light-skinned person with dreadlocks, I'm going to guess.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
yes.
yeah.
Yep. Definitely a white guy with
25
dreadlocks.
and 55 at the same time. I have no idea.
You're not sure if he was actually enrolled, but he was there.
Just part of the culture of the campus.
Okay. So let's move on from Silicon Valley to serial murder.
One and the same, really.
One and the same. Not that different. A high population of them in California. A high degree of sociopathy. I'm focusing... I know we mentioned Charlie Manson, but he was like... Well, 60, maybe even 70 years now. I don't know what time is anymore. But I wanted to focus on someone a little bit more recent, Richard Night Stalker Ramirez. I think he's a kind of an interesting character. Speech, I mean, I know he did a lot of like Hail Sataning during the trial, but in interviews, what struck me about him is that he speaks about himself in a very passive way.
They are desires, whereas if I didn't give in to them, I would be crushed by them. I believe in the evil in human nature. This is a wicked world, and in a wicked world, wicked people are born. I'm not going to blame society, my race, or people, or anything. It is up to the individual like myself to keep on knocking on whatever door they want to get into.
Like, one thing he mentioned to an interviewer is, it's a wicked world. In a wicked world, wicked people are born. Just this very, like, distance from himself, very little acknowledgement of himself. Just sort of like, yeah, bad shit happens.
You know, sometimes you just wake up one day and you think, maybe there is more to life out there. Maybe I just need to go stab a whole bunch of co-eds. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. Clothing style, regular 80s LA guy clothing, hoodie, sweatpants, jeans. Origin story, this is what I find interesting, is his origin story. Abusive dad. His biggest influence, though, was an older cousin of his who fought in the Vietnam War and took Polaroids there of him and his army buddies doing horrifying things to Vietnamese women. And he would show
women
little
might
Richard
be an
that.
overstatement, right?
Yeah.
Like, because these were probably children, if I remember correctly.
Could be.
Not to, like make the story even darker. I don't mean to quantify the horror. And be, No, they were women. They were women. Judging by the age of consent law as was established in 1970s Vietnam, these people.
Oh, God.
Jesus.
But yeah, that is his origin story. And I don't know why I focus on that, but that is the part of him that I find more interesting, is that it's this culture of American violence kind of manifesting itself in America. And we have this idea of, how could this happen? It's like, well, we gave people awards for doing this in other countries. So, yay us.
It's a joy.
Yeah. But I just like to compare that to, I don't know, movie serial killers. I'm thinking of campy serial killers who often have this, when I kill the 7th victim, I will open the gates to blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, like some real Son of Sam style. Well, I mean, Son of Sam, Zodiac, but
right.
7, as you had mentioned earlier, that right. Really hits the nail on the head.
Right, and what was striking about most real-life serial killers is, why did you kill them? Like, I don't know, I just felt like it. Like, there's not this complex motivation of just like, yeah, it just kind of felt like it. Like,
which I know for a lot of people, like, they want there to be something more grandiose out there. And they want there to be like some mythology. But to me, that makes it more horrifying.
Right.
To just know that, oh, well, I mean, I could have gotten oranges at the grocery store, but instead I brutally murdered this family of 6. Just because, like, don't you just hate where you end up some Tuesday afternoons? Like, that mentality is so alien to me. But to then know that there are people who genuinely possess that, that's more unnerving than to think, oh, well, troubled background, troubled past, all of these other factors. Of course, this is what got made here.
Right. I mean, he had a troubled past, but I guess Ted Bundy, comparatively, he said, like, no, I had a great childhood. Everything was fine. My parents loved me. They were nice. Life was fucking awesome. I just like murdering people. Like, fuck. Well, I don't know how to categorize this.
Yeah. At what point, by the way, like, can we just say that Ted Bundy just undefeated is what he remains? Because when the Netflix documentary came out, and then that movie with Zac Efron as Ted Bundy came out, and people were thirsting for him all over the internet.
Yeah.
Just like, that happened already. Like, he had 2 generations of women fawning after him. And, man, just bizarre.
Yeah. People are good and normal.
Especially because of the internet, though. That's the important thing. It only makes us more good and more normal. and that's why I'm going to sacrifice my eldest child to Elon Musk. That way, then I can go into space in the Zoom Zoom car.
Yes. All right. So I guess that would be the master plan. Charles Manson had a spectacular master plan, which was to incite a race war, which, okay, at least you got ambitions. I give you credit for that.
He just, man.
He was
Charles
not
Manson
good
makes
at
me-
it, though.
Yeah. Like, if you really wanted to do that in LA in the 60s, there are hundreds of other ways that you could
It would
incite
not
a
have been
race war.
hard.
Yeah. I mean, like, it was all bubbling just underneath the surface, but, like, you also really had to keep it your super cool little cult, didn't you? So you just went with the most bullshit idea of, what's that photo of the old man in the driveway with the graffiti that says, "We blacks rule"?
Yes. Blacks, who definitely made this graffiti, rule.
It's just, man, so lame. So lame.
God, disappointing.
Definitely the worst member of the Beach Boys, by far.
God damn. But I think most of them don't really have a master plan. They just kind of feel like murder, and that's it. That's it. Which is so bleak and nihilistic and awful. Which I think might probably be why so many writers love to put this grandiose, thrilling master plan, or like, oh, he had this whole cosmology and the murders fit into it. It was a sacrifice to a dark god. It's just, felt like it. Well, did it at least make you happy? Like, not really.
Well, even like True Detective, right? In season 1, like, for all the nihilism and just the world weariness that these detectives had, because they had encountered so many, just troubling things over the course of their careers. Even that ended with the Yellow King, or whatever the hell the name was there, and it had this flourish and this wrap up kind of a moment because it needed to have that cinematic quality. Whereas the real nihilism would just be, it's another case. You retire, then you start hearing about cases, and you're no longer on the force, so you can't do anything about it. And it's just going to keep on going that way until you die. Like,
Ugh.
It's fun times. It's fun times. And I guess, speaking out loud, I can see why they wouldn't have gone with that approach.
Right, because you can see audiences going, no!
Just
Why
continues to
isn't
tie
this show
into
about
that.
serial killers more uplifting at the end? Like, I'm sorry. I've gotten into so many arguments with people over Twin Peaks. Like, oh, why didn't this couple end up together? Why'd they have to end up unhappy? I'm like, I'm sorry about if this show about a girl being raped and murdered by a demon possessing her father is upsetting to you. I don't know what to tell you.
But it's upsetting to me, though, to me personally, that they didn't do this weird headcanon thing that I thought that they should have done.
Why isn't my fan fiction real?
I mean, that honestly, I think is where someone like the fucking Disney Marvel world universe construct, I don't know what the term is now, because they don't say cinematic universe because it's now all like also on their streaming service type stuff. Okay. But
plus it's not cinema, as Martin Scorsese said.
Yes, that would be a hell of a double down. The Marvel roller coaster universe, as it's called. But like every couple months they give a new piece of content out there. So
right.
Like they quell every fan's ability to have these insane, outlandish theories that then inevitably don't live up to all of that hype.
Right.
Just because they keep on feeding like an assembly line, which there are inherent problems with that format completely, don't get me wrong. But not having this overzealous toxic fan base like what might happen with like Rick and Morty or something is much better in my head.
Yeah, well, there is that for it. All right. Now, let's move on from like really big villains and murderers to like sort of more small, petty villains. Because, hey, not every story is about like murder and international crime. Sometimes stories are just dramas and the villain is someone who's just a dick. So let's talk about one particular dick, a guy named Hugo Schweitzer. If you're unfamiliar with him, then that's good, and you've been living your life well. But maybe about 5-10 years ago, on the blogosphere, when that was still a thing, Hugo Schweitzer was the male feminist. Whenever like a feminist publication needed a man to say stuff, they'd get Hugo Schweitzer. He was this, I guess, a women's studies professor. He was a very, very enlightened male, sort of, except it turned out that he had a long history of treating women like absolute garbage. As a college professor, he frequently slept with students, undergrads. In one instance, he actually tried to kill his girlfriend. But he was really fucking good at using that sort of academic feminist rhetoric, the rhetoric of self-care, the rhetoric of forgiveness and redemption and enlightenment to manipulate others. And I think that's a really important sort of villainous speech pattern that I think is useful to notice, because I see it a lot in the real world, which is sort of the use of enlightened social justice language to be a fucking monster.
Well, because he created the blueprint, right? Like, I don't know if now is necessarily like the best time to bring it up, but Meltdown May is happening right now.
Yeah.
While this recording is occurring, and it seems like every fucking semi-prominent out there leftist wokish kind of guy is, as it turns out, just an absolute and total monster in one way, shape, or form, and that then people are now getting to the point to where like they're pulling up tweets of when they were dunking on other people being revealed to be sex pests, and then just using it directly on them instead. And this guy, good old Hugh, or Hugo rather. Do you think he goes by Hugh or Hugo?
I don't know.
Like among his friends, he just really was able to nail like what you were talking about, taking all of the verbiage of progressive language and then applying it to just the most regressive type of actions. And it just seems like this is a guy who, slimy is an understatement when using a descriptor for hearing about what he's done makes me feel.
Oh yeah, he is super gross. And even his Meltdown May, well, it wasn't in May, I think it was in July, some years ago. Even his meltdown tweets are just dripping with that sort of self-care, victimhood, social justice bullshit. Part of his blog post where he's sort of talking about how he quits the internet because people are too mean to him. For one, the toxicity of takedown culture is exhausting and dispiriting. I'll admit it, I'm a most imperfect man. I have an absolutely dreadful past, one for which I continue to make quiet amends. So I'm done. Like, oh, you guys are being so mean to me just because of that one time I tried to murder my girlfriend.
Yeah, it was a one-time kind of thing.
It's a one-time kind of thing.
Yeah. How many of us at this DSA potluck convention, which is where we've all been gathered, have not attempted to kill your girlfriend?
Yeah. I see no reason why a man who has attempted to murder his girlfriend shouldn't be a prominent voice in the feminist community. I mean, who else are you going to get? I can't think of a single better person to talk about feminism
than a 40-something at that point, instead of mid-50s, white man. Yes,
who tried to murder a woman.
He also had sex with porn stars, like that he invited like to be speakers, like that was his racket for a while, if I remember correctly. But I wasn't as online as I am now, but I remember hearing vaguely about like a couple of people about where he would just kind of be like, hey, yeah, you should totally come and give a speech. Then after that, we can hang out for drinks, maybe see what happens. And what do you mean that this is an occupation? Huh? How come? How come you don't want me? How come you don't want this assistant adjunct professor at a local community college?
Don't be so sex negative.
Calling a porn star sex negative. Jesus Christ.
The patriarchy tells women to hate their bodies and like to guard their bodies like it's a precious, possession. But like, No, man, the patriarchy really wants you to be like uptight and puritanical and like.
No.
There are so many of those guys.
How many people have hit you up with that? Like, let's just say in the past month.
Oh,
you
God,
know?
there are so many of those guys. There are a million of those guys.
It just there's no way that those guys, I think, can ever survive on a long enough timeline, because this is clearly just the latest mask that they're wearing.
Oh,
like
yeah.
10 years ago, they were reading The Game and all those PUA tactics.
Right.
And like 20 years before that, they were just getting really into like, oh, I'm going to become like Gordon Gekko, Wall Street, money never sleeps. Yeah.
Right.
Like that mentality. I mean, it's just whatever that it boy facade is of that micro generation. That's what they're doing. And, we can trace all of this back, I guess, to John Mayer in one way, shape, or form. But this gentleman here, if I can call it that, it just really seems like there's an element of narcissism that is not able to be placated through anything other than getting a female stranger to acknowledge him and give him the validation publicly, not just privately, but publicly.
Yeah. So we've got his speech. Style, nothing really special about that. He looks like every other college professor in California. Polo shirts, jeans, glasses. I looked for his origin story. Both parents were philosophy professors, so that's where the trouble started.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's when you're going to just raise a monster.
Pretty
Not
much.
one, but two philosophy majors? Ugh.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not a thing that's supposed to happen. That's not all right. Both philosophy professors, not just majors.
Oh,
It's just
man,
like,
that's right.
Oh,
that's
no.
right. Yeah, actually, I majored in chemical engineering, but then I got taken to a different path due to my amazing professor, Dolph Lundgren. He's everywhere these days.
Yeah, so that, I guess, is his supervillain origin story. He was raised by his mom after his parents divorced, but he remained connected to his dad. Master plan, I guess, ego gratification of being the good man after being a fucking garbage bag to so many women for so long.
Yeah.
I guess.
I mean, it just is. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. It just seems like, speaking of micro generations, that like the next wave that at least I would be predicting is the hiding under the veneer of gender identity politics.
Ooh, I was going to say
that-
Marxism.
Oh, well, I mean, Marxism, yeah.
I mean, that's already here, I think.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think that that's going to be really hard to shake.
Monogamy is bourgeois.
Yeah, scarcity of resources, of just saying we can only be committed to each other. What sort of lifestyle is that? What example are we setting? Anyways, I don't believe in gender roles, but I also have not become self-sufficient enough to cook for myself or clean up after myself. So I'll need you to take up the lead on all of that. But I would also enjoy the fact if you could also work, because this apartment is definitely not going to pay for itself. And I have like a part-time job as a barista because I'm really, really, really just trying to make this podcast work with like 4 of my favorite friends.
Oh my God.
Like, he would be a podcaster today is my point. Like,
Yeah,
it would
podcaster and Twitch streamer. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. I know, at least on my the podcast I'm a part of, because I'm part of the problem as well.
Absolutely, we both are.
My co-hosts, they are fantastic at Twitch streaming, and they do Animal Crossing and Minecraft and all of these other like really cool fun games. But I cannot get over having that level of egoism, but in the good way, to think strangers on the internet will want to watch me play a video game, and like my personality will shine through that much that dozens and hundreds of people will want to tune in for that. Right. And I mean, I still am having to get over hearing my own voice sometimes. So I can only imagine how they're feeling.
Look, scolding me for trying to be a full-time Twitch streamer, even though I'm only making $20 a month from it, you know, you're really buying into capitalism's idea of what useful labor is and what isn't. Like, I really think you need to abandon capital's idea. I'm sorry I don't fit into the ruling class's idea of what worthwhile work is.
That really is the thing I'm looking forward to the most after the revolution. Is that way then we can like confirm that these people are losers, because even in a post-capitalist society, these people are still burnouts. It's a good time.
Anime appraisers. What's that joke? Like after the my anxiety prevents me from doing any kind of strenuous labor of any kind. So after the revolution, my job will be anime appraiser. Thank you.
The thing I still can't get out of my head is how several people I knew towards the end of high school and then following into college, I had stayed in contact with. They got into Bitcoin very early on for less than entirely legal reasons. Ooh. And then when like the boom happened, they cashed out right at the peak.
Good for them.
So, I mean, they just rode that wave. And then now they are trying to pivot all of that, and have been for about a year now, into being like prosperity gospel, but whatever the atheist version of that is.
Oh, no.
Types. Like, it was all part of a strategy, you know, not like they were trying to like buy assault rifles and like massive amounts of ketamine from some guy and not get traced for it. And I think that a lot of that can tie into this in the sense of people will take on to one thing and they'll take onto it as an aesthetic, and it's just so happened to become popular at this moment. Right. And because they've, you know, disguised themselves into that aesthetic already, suddenly they're in the mainstream of it, because I mean, social media tends to benefit the more sociopathic members of our society and narcissistic members more than anything else. And so all of a sudden they're at the forefront of this, and then they're being put up on pedestals when everyone in the real life is like, oh, holy fuck, that guy? Like, that's the guy? Like, I don't know if we want to name names here. I won't right now, but, you know, if we want to circle back into it. Right. But there's a Twitter account who... We all know that he's a professor at a college. Like we all know this. We all know that he like has sex with his students, and then people still follow him, regularly.
I think I know who you're talking about. I can't remember the name though.
I mean, I'll say it if you're comfortable with it.
If you want to, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's cognitarians. You know, Freddie Nietzsche, I believe, is the term. Not to be confused with the other sex pest the only real leftist, or whatever the fuck that guy's handle was. It's this weird moment of where they kind of popped up right before things got big, so then they rode the wave, and then people think, oh, well, you know, they're big, and I see screenshots of them on Facebook or in Instagram and whatever, so these are people who I can rely on and expect to give me feedback and give me insight, when in reality they were just kind of right place, right time for all the wrong reasons. Yeah,
it's gross, and it's so easy to do, unfortunately.
It really is. It makes me want to like be a grifter. Like, if I could, I would be a grifter, but not of these people. It ties in a little bit to like the next group.
Right. Well, I'm reminded. Remember that? I think that black woman on Twitter who got a bunch of MAGA guys to just give her money because she claimed that her parents were kicking her out for being a Trump supporter.
Yes.
God bless that woman. She's a genius. I love her.
Hands down, one of the better scams that someone can run.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing I would want to do. Like,
keep
rip
that
people
hustle
who genuinely deserve to be ripped off, and give half the money to charity and spend the other half on weed.
Yeah. Because I mean, like, so many grifters, like, if they actually make that like their actual thing and their aesthetic, like what Candace Owens has done, they inevitably play a little too fast, too loose, and they get like into QAnon circles.
Right.
And that's when I think you know that you need to start pulling way the fuck back. But inevitably, they always double down because they see this as an untapped market for them.
Right. And it's lucrative. I mean, no matter how ridiculous you get, people are going to keep...
Yeah, there's like a
these
group
people
of like...
are not going to wise up. They're going to keep like paying you for it. So you keep doing it until people start trying to break into your house to teach you about the Illuminati or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, we have, like 30 people, I think, all in all, are kind of like the vanguard of sorts that are talking about what is Q, and this is the message from Q, and all this sort of stuff, and creating the vast mythos.
The Q-universe.
Oh, no. Oh, don't give them that. Don't, please. It's a picture of a galaxy, but it's completely flat. So, I mean, these people, though, it's not that many, but they have forever shaped politics now.
Yeah.
Because so many people have bought in, and the people who haven't fully bought in are at least adopting their talking points. So, who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, speaking of grifters, let's talk about, again, another set of petty, disgusting grifters. Fucking MRAs.
Hell yeah.
This is a little 2015 maybe, but
oh no, they're still
speech.
around. Oh yeah.
They're still around, kind of. I mean, they've pivoted more toward like QAnon shit, but they're still kind of around, and it's still, the MRA-ness sort of still gloms into this massive, repulsive, bad ideas.
Like, I used to make jokes all the time, again, probably around circa like 2015, 2016, about being part of like the vol cell vanguard of sorts, of just like the... Nowadays, I guess the term would be the anti-horny left. But it's for me, it was just, like the brand was not horny posting. It was bashing on people for horny posting, and then trying to get some cool points, I guess, off of that, and trying to get people to try and join my cause. But it is spun out into insanity these days. Like,
yeah,
all that they want to talk about are blatantly misogynistic things that somehow always bleed into racist things, because it's always like vaguely white supremacist language the entire time. I think that with them, they are a directionless void, because they define themselves so much, at least at the beginning, as dad who just wants his kids back, kind of a mentality. To
dad
then,
who
like,
was denied custody for a very good reason, it turns out.
Yeah. Listen, you domestically abuse your wife once, and you have 150 sexual abuse allegations. Suddenly the courts don't want you around your kids anymore. It's
what
fucking
do you mean
bullshit.
I gotta feed them? What the fuck?
Yeah,
I'm a man. I don't cook. That's women's work. Okay, well, your ex-wife is gonna get custody. What?
Yeah, I demand custody of my child. Okay, well, you're gonna have to take care and provide for your child. This is some bullshit. I can't believe this. This is persecution. My rights. My rights.
My rights. I just want to have them. I don't want to take care of them. Jesus. Jesus.
My favorite subsect of the groups that aren't full-blown red-pilled or full-blown white supremacist or full-blown QAnon are the people who now believe that if you remain abstinent, that you will get superpowers.
Nice.
Like legitimate superpowers. Like you can move objects with your mind and everything else. And if you don't have superpowers, it's because you haven't waited long enough. And it's the most brilliant troll. I don't know how someone bought that, but it just is insane to me.
That's great.
whoever came up with that was clearly making fun of them, and then people bought that for some reason, because everyone's kind of been somewhere where you were focusing on something, and then like the air shifted slightly, and then that thing moved like an empty bag of chips or a pencil rolled. And so enough people, I guess, had that happen. They thought it's because no one has fucked me in so long that this occurred. Just brilliant.
I'm so horny that I can move objects with my mind. That's great. I fully support this line of thought. I fully support this. Good for them. This is the best possible conclusion that you could come to, though, because this is the one where they like avoid women.
Yeah,
and that's good.
It legitimately becomes, there was this subgroup, I'm trying to remember what the names were. One of them was called Training for Jerusalem, which let's Knights Templar are like a whole different bag there. So already tempting with the white supremacist language. But like it was a bunch of these guys who became like hardcore workout bros. And then like it was a sub bodybuilding forum essentially, but for these no fap guys.
Oh my God.
So they were just getting so ripped because they thought that they could become like superheroes or super villains rather. Just waiting for the telekinesis to kick in.
That is magical. Oh God. So, I mean, I know it's hard to pin these guys down in terms of speech styles, but you've got the sort of weird Reddity slang. You've also got a lot of these guys genuinely do try to like talk like Skeletor.
Yes.
Like they really do try to affect that like cartoon villain speech style, which is kind of weird. Like there's a guy who I guess he sounds like Megatron, but he's talking about not masturbating, and it's kind of a strange trip that I was not ready for.
I'm just really picturing like Autobots don't jack off.
Yeah, I think the only other person I can think of, like a public figure who imitates that style of speech and writing, is Sebastian Gorka. Like he really does talk like a cartoon supervillain. And it's kind of great because like his influence is gone now. All he does is he has a radio show where some Canadian prank call guy keeps calling him up and making fun of the size of his head. So he's doing that like, "Oh, have I triggered the libs?" in response to, "Yeah, I see your head's real big, Dan. It's real large. It's like a balloon, Dan." Like doing that thing where you're trying to pretend you're not mad, but you're very clearly mad, and it's just it's kind of magical. It's pretty good. Style, MRA style is Italian chef's kiss.
Yeah,
very distinctive.
I think we all know like what their style is because it still exists.
Yes.
Like,
Don Draper cosplay. It's so good. It's so good. Fedora and bowling shirt.
It really is the
Sword.
It's the antithetical version of what Wyatt Coke has going on, because like its darkest timeline Wyatt Coke is what their style is. Like, there are flames, there is dragons, there is definitely some Eastern culture appropriation.
Oh yeah,
subtly hinted at throughout. So
yeah. Like, when you sign up for one of those forums, you are just, like, a katana arrives in the mail.
And,
you don't even got to order it. It just shows up.
And this really is me further telling on myself. The whole reason that I've discovered these, like, workout warrior, no-fap wannabe supervillain guys is because, like, they had the most realistic and poignant kratom reviews of any part of the internet. Like they would go into like taste, consistency, the best way to break it down, like whether or not like this particular strain worked better with orange juice or with chocolate milk or whatever. I mean, like they went in, they had these amazing tips because that's the other thing that they were just like all hopped up on. My God, these poor guys.
Okay. Well, I mean, stop clocks. And I mean, it's a way for them to like subsist on food without having to cook, which is feminine, and it's not okay for them to do that.
I'm just picturing them like next to a microwave, deciding to pledge fealty to it.
I'm not going to touch those buttons. I'm not going to do it. Unless you're that one MRA cook who suggested shoving a frozen chicken breast in the oven for a full hour on 400 degrees.
Oh my God, no.
That was magic. Putting it in some leftover Hardee's dipping sauce.
Oh.
And you got a meal fit for Caesar, my friend.
Oh no.
So
that
good.
just kept getting worse.
It's so good. I love it so much. Okay, so style, exquisite.
Of course.
Origin story. I mean, obviously, we're generalizing for a whole group of people, but one thing I've found over and over again with MRAs is either physically or emotionally absent fathers.
Oh, absolutely. No,
Over
that's
and
not
over again.
overgeneralizing at all. Mostly because that's also true pretty much for any male, realistically.
It's true. And it's interesting because usually, I guess the Hollywood hack screenwriter thing would be they hate women probably because their mom was abusive. It's like, no, mom was okay and normal. It's just dad was like a garbage bag.
Yeah, like dad wasn't there. I never learned how to play catch.
Yeah.
So I decided to figure
I
out
never
how
learned
to...
how to shave, and I blame feminism. Like, well, did your dad teach you? No. Well, that sounds like a dad problem and not a feminism problem. Did a bunch of burly feminists like wrestle him into submission whenever he tried to show you how to shave? No.
I still
not.
carry the scars of my father not teaching me how to shave properly, because half of my face is growing with the grain, the other half it's growing against. By that I just mean that it's just sprouting in all different directions. Everything's a horror show when it's just down to stubble. It looks like a fucking Van Gogh's Starry Night is happening across my face.
Oh, God. Although Paul Elam's origin story was pretty notorious. According to an interview with BuzzFeed, he said that the moment he knew he was becoming an MRA was when he was 13 and his mom forced him to take diarrhea medicine. So there's a lot going on there.
I can't. Man.
It's funny. Like, you're at the age when you understand that medicine fixes bodies and that diarrhea is a problem. Like, I don't understand how you can be at that age and just be like shitting uncontrollably and saying, I'm okay with this. I will take no steps to correct this state of affairs.
Because you're cutting, bro. Because you're cutting. Getting ripped. Getting swole.
And this, just trying to imagine being the mom. Your son is just leaving a trail wherever he goes, and you're like, oh my fucking God, would you just put this in your mouth? I can't deal with this. You're too old. I can't. Fuck you. You just pry his mouth open and put it in like he's like giving a cat a pill.
This is what happens when you fucking eat only frozen food for 7 days in a row. You haven't had vegetables since winter.
Oh my God. So that's a pretty cool origin story, and it's pretty amazing that he like comfortably told a reporter that, like trying to think that it would make him sound cool or epic somehow. Like, my origin story is I pooped a lot and the matriarchy tried to stop me. And so what is the master plan here of these guys? I mean, obtain superpowers. That's pretty cool, actually. That's a pretty sweet master plan.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's really like ultimately at least some of their master plans. I think like on like a much darker, more serious note, just stripping women away of all of their rights.
Right.
Just kind of to make themselves feel better. If they can't improve, they can drag other people down.
Right.
And so, as long as then that gives someone for them to shit on, not with diuretics, then they'll consider themselves happy.
What strikes me, though, as interesting is they're still never happy, though, because, I mean, they talk about how they hate career women, but in traditional relationships where the man is the primary breadwinner, they complain that the woman's a gold digger. It's like, well, you're where the money comes from. When she wants a new shirt, she's going to ask you for money to buy the shirt because that is the way to get money. And they're like, you bitch! Like,
I'm getting drained here. How could you?
Like, I don't know what you want here.
Yeah. It's something.
It is. So, let's tie it together. Of the various villains we've discussed today, which real-life villain seems kind of closest in mannerism, style, origin story, and master plan to a campy fictional villain?
Oh, boy. Oh. Like, a villain that I would root for, or like a real-world, like, Bond villain type? Because, I mean, like... The one who I want is Wyatt Coke, of course, just because he's my favorite.
I'm thinking in terms of like, someone a Bond villain, a Disney villain.
Oh yeah, then I mean it's Elon Musk, right? Like just because he came from like the evil villain blueprint factory, like, he gained sentience, and that's kind of what happened. The fact that Elon Musk and Elizabeth Holmes haven't like had a kid together is kind of bizarre to me. You would think that like Jeffrey Epstein would set up that meet cute for them.
Oh God, what a nightmare. My money is, I know her master plan is lacking, but Ghislaine Maxwell, just because of the style and the British accent.
Yeah.
I'm going for style points. That British accent gives her an edge.
I could actually really see like a Pierce Brosnan Bond having like a conversation with her over cocktails. So, yeah.
Because there's always the evil girlfriend that Bond has to defeat. She's 100% the evil girlfriend.
Well, I mean, that would make her the Halle Berry, I guess, of this group. So, not the worst lot to be in.
Right. All right. And let's look at a couple of fictional villains, or one or two fictional villains who you think sort of break the template, who don't fall into campy, speechifying, well, Mr. Bond type villain. I'm going to start Annie fucking Wilkes.
Yeah.
From Stephen King's Misery, my favorite villain of all time, because she's completely over the top and extreme and ridiculous and 100% real. I have met Annie Wilkes. I have met multiple Annie Wilkeses. There are a lot of them in fandom. Several of them probably write for the Mary Sue. You get a character that's so extreme and so over the top, but abso-fucking-lutely real. And I give Stephen King so much credit for creating that. Like, this was before fandom was such a big thing. Before it was this all-consuming, before geek culture sort of swallowed everything else. So, like, he didn't have as much to work with while creating her, but he got it down, not just like the extreme fandom, but also the sort of sexual weirdness, this like strange puritanical streak where she'll murder people, but she won't use swear words, the dowdiness, like perfect villain.
I mean, I think that's why she's so iconic, that she is able to just rely on the force of personality that she maintains, and that's what's made it so timeless. So beautiful.
Yeah, I think Stephen King, I don't think he's a great writer, but I think his villains are fantastic. His monsters, okay, but like I think his human villains are just fucking brilliant. They're just horribly repugnant, but incredibly memorable and feel very, very real. And they're not like cute or sympathetic or, oh, here's the bad incident in childhood and here's why you have to feel sorry for me. And they're not more likable than the hero, which I think was a deliberate choice for him. And that's like his strength in writing, is writing these just absolutely nightmarish human beings. And Annie Wilkes is the queen of them all.
She is the blueprint, I think. Is that meme gonna still be popular by the time it comes out? Overlay that for everyone. I love it.
I love her. What about you?
Mine is someone who I think keeps on getting underrated. I mean, not as underrated as Annie Wilkes, but it's the T-1000, because that is one of just the most cut, print, post level villains on paper, and the performance in the movie really made everything seem much more visceral and much more real. But then the more I thought about the T-1000, the more I was like, this thing does not have any actual template behind it. That doesn't really speak. The style is liquid metal. So it's very adaptable to whatever it is. And I mean, from origin wise, it's constantly changing, because no one can ever decide like what Skynet actually is, because we have to keep on coming out with Terminator movies every 6 years or so. And I mean, in terms of a master plan, it has just one singular goal of killing one woman. And then it would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for those meddling kids. It's almost the polar opposite, I would say, of your villain, because this guy has no personality whatsoever.
Yeah.
I mean, like, there's blank slate about this, but then there's no reasoning with it.
Right, he's just a void.
Mm-hmm. This is really a podcast episode that's delving into my psyche, and I'm discovering some things about myself and the weird horrors that I'm grappling with in the middle of quarantine. So.
Oh yeah, but he is great. He's fantastic, and I do love the subtle subversiveness of making the big baddie of your movie a cop.
Yes, I mean
that's pretty cool.
James Cameron, surprisingly woke in certain areas. Not going to defend Avatar, but really bringing light to a big corporation's satire for a long time.
Yeah. Anyway. So why don't we wrap it up? Is there something you would like to promote? Where can we find and support your work?
Oh, thank you so much. You can go ahead and find the community I'm a part of, Psychic Dolphin Garage, on Twitter at Dolphin Garage. You can find me on Twitter at Culture Truther, because I couldn't think of a better name when I was trying to switch over to a new account. Yeah, I mean, we got a whole lot of stuff going on there. If you just hit us up on Twitter, then we'll direct you to the Discord and the Twitch, the Instagram, just every other form of it. We'll be able to guide you along from that point.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks for joining us. That was really fun.
Yes.
Surprisingly fun, considering we spent like 20 minutes talking about a pedophile.
I wish I could say that is not some of my forte, but covering dark topics and trying to find some semblance of humor is one of the few things that I am okay at. Not writing, not spelling, barely speaking, but I try and cobble it together.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on. That was fantastic. And thank you, audience, for listening. That's all for this episode. If you like what you heard, head on over to patreon.com/writegood and sign up. Book Club tier members get a monthly bonus episode in which we talk in depth about a work of fiction like The Yellow Wallpaper or The Iron Dream. Once we hit 20 subscribers, we'll open up the Lament configuration and do a special episode on Clive Barker's The Hellbound Heart. So sign up. We have such sights to show you. And be sure to listen to us next time when we talk about sex work in writing. Until then, keep writing good.
KittySneezes.com in color.